Dog Works Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com. From First Paw Media, sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company, this is the Dog Driver Show. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert Forto and Kurosh Parto.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Robert and I'm here with my co-host KP and we are the Dog Driver Show. Be sure to check us out over on dogworksradio.com. And today we have a guest calling in from England. She is a Dryland racer and used to be a pretty competitive skier over in Britain as well. Who do we have today, KP?
Yes, today we have one of my Facebook friends, actually, Chantelle Goddard from England, joining us and talking to us about her background, her dogs, and her basically racing Dryland and being a skijoring in Britain also. Chantelle, how's everything going in England?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit, and our listeners who are not familiar with you, a little bit of background and who you are and what are you about?
Okay, so in my younger days, because I'm no spring chicken anymore, I used to do a lot of ski racing, as you guys have said, and I spent a long time in the mountains racing and then later as a ski instructor. So it wasn't going to take long until I came across huskies in the mountains. And as soon as I saw a husky, I remember it was snowing. I saw these piercing blue eyes, staring back at me through the snow. And I was like, oh, my God, that dog is amazing. And that was it. I was hooked. And every time I went out abroad, I would always go and seek out the tour rides. And I'd go and get a ride. I'd get friendly with the people. I'd do a little bit of work for them. So then I'd end up sort of doing a bit of ski instructing and working with the dogs. And that was a brilliant balance. That was awesome. And then I grew up, I came home, got married, had kids, got a nice pet dog, which was a collie cross. And then when my kids were older, I thought now's the right time to get my first husky. And that's what I did. And as soon as I got that dog, when it was old enough, I was like, right, now I'm going to start running. And that's how it all started. And then it became a Arctic Quest, a business. And then I started racing. And here I am now.
Yeah, Arctic Quest you mentioned. What is that about? Tell us a little bit about that organization.
So Arctic Quest is a husky rider organisation in the UK, one of only 4 or 5. I don't run the rides anymore, but I was co-founder of it with another British racer. And at the time, it was quite a big thing because obviously we've got no snow. And we don't have a great climate for running dogs either. So we had to be very careful about how we did it. And we run it all on rigs, on 3-wheeled rigs, and sometimes on ATV if people can't use the rigs. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And in the summer, we do run. We don't run very far. And we have to go sort of super early in the morning when it's cooler.
You mentioned about talked about the climate in England. We had interviews with some fellow Scottish racers up north from you guys, and they were talking about the climate also. How do you organize, as you know, our listeners, they may know England is not very well known for sled dog racing, of course, but how do you organize around the weather for your training?
So our winters are really rubbish. They basically just rain all the time. We very rarely get snow. I live quite far south down, and we never see any snow at all. And if we do have snow, it's like a snow day. The whole country, grinds to a standstill. The kids can't go to school because we can't cope with it. We don't know what to do. So we have to just go slowly. There's no distance you can run. You can't get any distance trainings. And because we're a small country as well, with lots of people packed in, you have to be really careful with your training and where you run because you always come into contact with other people. So it's about getting up really early or running really late, just choosing the coolest times of the day, really. Even in winter, we can get a day in February and be sort of 15, 16 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius. It's probably 50 or 60, I don't know, in Fahrenheit, something like that. So we have to be very, very careful, and it's knowing your dogs well, having a good feeding and hydration program, and not pushing them too hard or too fast.
You mentioned knowing your dogs. So you started with Siberian Huskies, I'm understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah, like most people, I started with Sibes, and I still do love to watch Sibes run. There's nothing quite as graceful and as amazing as a team of Siberian Huskies. Then we got some Alaskans, who were awesome fun. They were brilliant. But as soon as I went out to my first World Championships, in France that was, and I saw these floppy-eared, manic, foaming at the mouth hounds, I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to run. And I guess being a skier, it was the whole speed thing. And I just wanted to go as fast as I could with a dog that was happy to go as fast as it wanted to do, you know? It's a buzz. It's a real buzz running hounds. Running Gracers is what I run. It's awesome.
So you have some of those hounds right now, I imagine, correct?
Yeah, I have two Gracers, Magnus and Marshall. They're a dad and son combination, and they're from Lena Boyson Hilliston lines and Eagle Tracks lines. So my dogs are awesome. It's me that's the weakest link, and I'm the one that needs to keep up with them because I do it on bike and scooter.
Chantelle, as I mentioned again and again, a lot of our listeners, they are not sled dog folks, and they're just animal and dog lovers. Tell us what a Greyster is. What is this breed again?
So a Greyster is a purpose-bred sprint dog, and it was credited as being started by something like 23 times world champion Lena Boyson Hillestad, and she's created them in Norway, and she took a German short-haired pointer and crossed it with an Alaskan Husky. And she really admired the stamina and the speed and the power of German short-haired pointers, and how also trainable they were, and they had really good feet as well. And she started messing around with the mix of it, and then decided she'd add a bit of greyhound in, which is where the grey comes in the name. So now, some 20 odd years later, they're not, I mean, they're not a KC breed or anything like that, but they have very, very strict lines and all the rest of it. And they are a cross between a greyhound, German short-haired pointer, Alaskan Husky, and sometimes people put in a little bit of English pointer. But I don't go down that route because it's all very complex about the right amounts of this, the right amounts of that. Apparently too much greyhound and they become a bit soft in the head and stuff like that. But they are amazing dogs. They're like insane drive to run. So they're just like these incredible athletes on the trail, and then get them in the house and they're just on the sofa, like the laziest things around. They are brilliant. They're really good dogs.
These dogs, do they handle heat better than the your typical Huskies and Alaskans?
My guys do pretty well in the heat. One of my dogs is really good. In fact, he prefers running when it's a little bit warmer than when it's colder. But a dog with an incredible drive to run, you've still got to control that because they're just not going to know when to stop. I think Huskies and Alaskans, maybe because they go a little bit slower, they have a bit more of a switch where they can be like, guys, let's slow down a little bit, let's ease off. These Greysters, they don't know that. They will just keep going and going and going. So there's just as much responsibility running those in warm weather as there is, with a thicker coated dog.
Chantelle, you mentioned that you've been doing the racing, the competitive racing, only for the last 4 years, even though you have a very long background in competitive racing in the skiing and also in your previous life with what you did before. Tell me about your racing circuit that you do and what you've done before.
So in Dryland, predominantly, which is pretty much what we do, I prefer to do bike. So that's one dog pulling me on my bike, and I'm doing the best to try and keep up with him and stay on the bike. And the reason I chose to have bike was because when I came away from Arctic Quest, I didn't have so many dogs. It was much easier for me to transport 2 dogs and to train 2 dogs. And it was just an easier way of life, really, for me to do that. Bike is awesome because it is one of the fastest disciplines, but it's also a real challenge for the musher as well. Because, I wasn't great on a bike. I could ride a bike, but I was certainly no pro mountain biker. But I'm going over trails, bouncing around, and I've got to stay on. And I'm riding in the mud, over rocks, bumps, everything. So it's been a real challenge for me to make myself as good a rider as I can be for my dog. We do... Probably our season in the UK starts in September-ish, depending on the weather, and it goes normally through to March, April. again, depending on the weather. And we have if you wanted to, you could race every weekend in the UK. It's really quite a big scene. We have some events which are just for monos, the monosports like Canyocross, bike and scooter, and then we have the British Championship Series and other events which involve everybody, the Canyocrossers to the up to 8 dog teams. So it's up to you how much you want to do. For us in the UK, we have to do the British Championships with our governing body in order to qualify to become members of Team GB, and then we can go and get to race internationally abroad, which is really where it's at, really.
Chantelle, you mentioned these races are popular in England and the UK in general. I remember when we talked to the Carters, Mary and John from Scotland, they mentioned that there are races with hundreds of people doing Dryland. Is that the same case in England?
Yeah, everybody travels. So we go up to Scotland. We've raced at Bowlands at John and Mary's, and that's an awesome setup. That's one of my favourite trails, actually, to run that one. And John and Mary will come down to England, and they have to travel the whole breadth of the country, and everybody knows everybody. That's the circuit. So the sides race with the open class, but they have their own medals. The medals will be split for Siberians and Hounds and things like that. And in the first British Championships race I ever went to, there was something like 1,000 dogs there, well over 1,000 dogs. It was amazing. It was awesome.
That is incredible. You are also, in your resume, you have something which is very, very interesting, is that you are the very first British skijorer in a world championship. Tell me about that.
Well, being a skier, and I'm an alpine skier. I'm not a cross-country skier, but I had dabbled on cross-country skis, but they are completely different, as most people will know. And we had a snow day in where I live once, and we had snow in the streets. So what I did was I hooked my dog up, took him around the streets, because nobody drives in the snow in the UK because we're all scared. And I got filmed by some local people doing it, who they then sent it to the news, and it went out and went a bit viral on Facebook. And everybody was like, oh my God, this is amazing, you should do it. So that put the idea in my head, and I was like, yeah, okay, let's have a go at this. And basically I trained on roller skis, because obviously we've got no snow. I did hook my dog up on roller skis, but I would not suggest to try that at all. That was a little bit mental. And I did wear quite a lot of padding because there's no brakes on roller skis. You can't stop at all. And snow plowing really doesn't cut it. So I roller skied, and then I trained my dogs on a scooter for the mileage, because it was a lot more mileage than what we're used to. So when I went to France to compete in the World Champs, it was 18 kilometres, and we normally race 5K over here. So it took me all winter. I had I devised quite a big program to gradually increment the mileage, so I knew my boys could do it. And I did 2-dog ski jour. I didn't do the 1-dog because I'm not a good enough skier for that, and that was 12K. And I thought I might blow my dog out and not be able to do the 2-dog. So I did 2-dog ski jour. It was amazing. It was the last race of the whole championships because it got put back because of snow and stuff. And the start line, it was in France, and loads of people came out to watch. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fall on the start chute, I was so scared. But I didn't, and I got around the whole course. I did have an equipment issue because my quick release came off. But yeah, we got all the way around, and we came in and we overtook people, and my dogs came in just so happy and so strong. I was like, oh my God, if I hadn't messed up me, then we could have been like, maybe 5th or 6th, something like that. As it was, we came 9th. And we weren't last, so I was super chuffed. And everybody was really cool because I was the first Brit, and they all expected me to be sort of like, embarrassment, a bit like the whole Eddie the Eagle thing. But it was really cool, and it's something I will definitely do again. It was awesome.
How does it feel for you coming from the island, England, UK, I guess, go to these competition, and I'm talking about the snow part of it actually, and for me, for example, seeing someone from Scotland or England in a snow race, it is not strange, but it's kind of novelty. Are you well accepted among the other drivers?
Because I'd been going to the snow for a long time and handling Vicky Pullen's dogs, we started Arctic Quest together, I was sort of quite well known. And Vic worked her way up from being, her first race, she was last. I mean, she'll tell you. And to this world champ, she's in the top 10. And she's now really respected. So I sort of ran off the back of that for quite a while. And when I did get to snow, everyone was like, oh, my God, you don't just handle, you can do it yourself. And I was like, well, we'll see, won't we? And people were just lovely. And the first snow race we ever went to, was in 2014, and that was in Germany, in Todmus, and the Germans love their dog sled racing. 30,000 people turned up to watch the mass start. It was really, really cool, and all the organisers were like, "Oh my God, this is the first Brits we've had. We're so chuffed to see you." So they've always been really welcoming because they want more nations, and it is hard for UK people because there's no snow to train on or anything like that. I went out before I skijored. I did a week training beforehand and then went and raced. That was as much as I could get. So we're getting better. It's a bit like the British ski team has always been, never really up there. But now we're getting athletes who are getting close to the podiums and doing well. So I think we are respected. I hope we are.
That's good. So you guys, yeah, that's good. So you're not the Jamaican bobsled team.
I hope not.
Very good.
No, I would not. People are absolutely, they're lovely. They're really nice out there. And they're just so pleased to see us having a go. And nobody is snobby or like, oh, you guys shouldn't be here. They're really encouraging and really cool.
That is
it's
so
an awesome
great.
Experience, yeah. I hope more Brits will get out and do it and try and go to the snow because they are scared of it. It's a whole different ball game, isn't it? So...
That's fantastic. Chantelle, you mentioned several times having one or two dogs and doing dryland or skijoring or bike joring. Tell me, do you believe that that would be a big chunk of the future of our sport because it is more affordable, it's less time consuming, and it's less restrictive?
Certainly in Europe. I don't know sort of like America and things like that, but in Europe it is massive. Canyocross and bike jor have the biggest amount of entries out of all the disciplines. Because, like, for all those reasons you've just said, you don't have to have a big kennel. It's easier to transport them. It's less cost. There aren't many big teams in the UK, and there aren't many people with big kennels. And that's because we don't have any space. We all live in houses pretty much on estates and things like that. Not everyone is a John and Mary, with a farm and acres of land to train in. So for people with big teams, it's a massive commitment and it's really hard. They've got to get up at sort of like 3 o'clock in the morning, drive to the forest to train, and then go and do a day's work. So it's very, very hard for big teams over here. It's much easier for smaller people. So it could be the way it goes. It really could be.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, it's the world is becoming smaller and smaller for for land, I guess. You mentioned Canyocross and monosports, and I believe there's actually a federation for that. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the International Canyocross Federation, and they run their own world champs and European champs specifically for one-dog scooter, bike, and Canyocross. And it's massive. Absolutely massive. I've been for 3 years now, and that draws in monosport. That's somewhere between 600 to 800 competitors there. And that's over 50 odd nations.
Wow.
It's amazing.
That
very
is
well
amazing.
organised event, very, very good, and it's a very high quality of people attending. All the top people who bike, like Eagle Tracks, all the good people go to those who are running, fast teams of dogs as well. So it's a good standard.
Chantelle, it's very interesting to hear your story, and I have a couple of questions for you. The first one is in regard to being a former elite ski racer. I have a very good friend that was a college ski athlete, and I got her involved with the sport of mushing just a few years ago. She grew up on skis from age 2 up, and she compared dog mushing to what she did. She was a slalom racer, and she said that the adrenaline from mushing is very comparable. Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, totally. I did slalom, giant slalom, and downhill. And downhill probably was the scariest event out of all of it. But I guess if you're a skier or you're a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so it was proper. All those feelings. The feeling when you're used to be on a set of skis and it could go wrong. Is it going to go wrong? Am I going to make a mistake? Is my dog going to chase a squirrel? It is a bit like being on two planks and, hoping you're going to stay upright. But it's what keeps you. It's great for the soul, isn't it? It's what keeps you alive, keeps you going.
It sure does. And my last question to you, Chantelle, is the question I ask everybody on the show, and that is if somebody came to you and was just getting started in the sport and they were looking for some advice, what would you tell them if you could only give them one piece of advice?
Manage their expectations. So everybody comes thinking that their dog is going to be the best dog, and it's going to run super fast, and then maybe it just trots or it doesn't listen or whatever, and then it's like, oh, it's a dog's fault, it was rubbish. It's not the dog's fault, is it? The dog doesn't know what it's supposed to be doing. It's trying to do something that it's no idea. So manage your expectations. If the dog pulls you for a little bit to begin with, then hey, that's brilliant. If the dog gets tired after a mile, then just slow down. Keep it fun, keep it light, keep it really positive. And the biggest thing is once people have run once, they then want to go and run 10 miles, don't they? Because they love it. And I get that. But your dog's not fit to do that. And you can't go and run 10 miles. You've got to, take it steady and manage those expectations. That would be my advice.
Hey, that's great advice. I think that's the first time anybody has said that one. So it's always good to hear what different people say from all different backgrounds for sure. KP, anything in closing?
No, Chantelle, wanted to thank you for spending the last 20 minutes or so with us. I really, really enjoyed chatting with you, knowing you more, knowing about your background and what you have in mind. We'll be following you on social media for your training season and for your racing season. And hope to see you skijoring in Alaska very soon.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. Well, thanks a lot for inviting me on. It was awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. On behalf of my co-host today, KP, this is Robert for the Dog Driver Show. Be sure to check us out over on social media, just searching for DogWorks Radio. And we will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From First Paw Media, this is the Dog Driver Show. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you can see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert Forto and Kurosh Parto. Our producer is Robert Forto and created for First Paw Media.